Okay, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm Representative Gary Hopper, and with my co-host, John Heichel, who's invisible again this afternoon. And tonight we have Hillary Clinton. What?
Here he goes.
Here he comes. Oh, he is not invisible tonight. He's fashionably late, is what it is, right?
How you doing?
Yeah, he's got shorts on. He's fashionable.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go to the beach tonight after the show.
After the hailstorm?
After the paparazzi gets
Right.
gets all
Yeah,
the pictures
it's
they
pretty
have.
bad. It's pretty bad. We go out.
When
We
we go out,
we have to go like the back door just so we can actually
Well,
have peace quiet.
careful. We go
the door in the alley.
we go to the
no,
pizza
that's not
place
even
next
good.
door.
Yeah. Jeez. Hey, John.
Someone just asked me if I think President Trump tells the truth.
I do think he tells the truth.
I do.
I think, anyway.
It's not Hillary, right?
This is Representative Bart
Fromuth, yeah.
Fromuth.
Yep, from
Fromuth.
I know, but excellent rep.
Nice to see you, John.
How are you?
The big
Good.
city of Bedford.
From the big city of Bedford.
How long you been up there?
This is my second term.
Second term.
Yeah.
How do you like it?
It has its ups and downs, you know.
Why'd you get involved? What motivated you? Because I know it's probably for the money, but
Definitely for the money, but no, I'd moved to Bedford back in, I want to say, 2012, and started following the legislature a little bit, and knew that Bedford was a pretty heavily conservative town in terms of the votes were concerned. But some of the votes I saw on things like the gas tax from some people in the delegation just kind of got me interested.
Yeah.
In,
what the heck was his name? That was.
He's in the legislature right now. He's a good friend of mine, but at the time, I really didn't like the vote, and I just thought as a small business owner and someone that was in his 30s, maybe I could lend more of a voice to the working community and the small business community up at the State House as well.
At least a different point of view.
Yeah. I was mistaken, but I tried.
Well, no, you're not mistaken. I mean, every bit helps. It's like when I started, I had brown hair, and I was younger. I was still working full-time in a machine shop.
Yeah.
And the reason I did it is kind of the same thing. It's like, how many blue-collar conservatives do they have up there? Not too many.
Not many.
Not working stiffs.
Yeah.
Not, it's so I thought that was a different angle to look at things, and I was concerned almost primarily about Second Amendment rights, because at that time it was still up in the air whether we were going to lose them or not.
Yeah.
How do you lose your rights by the legislature?
Because it
through
gets
statute. I still don't understand that.
I do get it.
If the legislature can pass statute that will actually take away our rights, our God-given rights, our constitutional rights, our Bill of Rights, then something's wrong.
I get that, and you're right.
Like constitutional carry is not constitutional carry. I don't believe the legislature granted us our rights back.
Right, I get that, but there's a practical,
contract we're all in.
The practical matter. And back in, I think it was my first term, there was a bill with Martha Fuller Clark, and I think it was Senator Bert Cohen. Is he the liberal?
Yes.
Okay.
Extreme.
Yeah, extreme liberal senator from the Seacoast. And there was a bill in there, and it was basically modeled after a Massachusetts bill that if guns couldn't survive, 5,000 degree Fahrenheit for, being soaked in that heat for 5,000 hours and, still work afterwards. I'm exaggerating,
Right.
but it was all this BS to try to get to limit the type of guns people could actually carry.
Right.
Because Bert and Martha really know so much about firearms and what's best for you.
She's always been an advocate for Second Amendment rights.
Yes, she is
Very powerful.
totally in love with this. I'm sure she'll tell you that she believes in the right to bear arms. But anyway, so Martha Fuller, I'm not going to say that, had a bill in, and it really struck me because, like I said, I ran. I was like, I'm sure it was a year when I was a freshman, and I ran because of the Second Amendment, and I wanted to fight back because it's like it's a pretty casual show.
Little disco, little
Disco.
little mood music, you know.
So anyway, I'm sitting in there in that room, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks, because there was about 400 people filled the reps hall to fight against this bill, and there was maybe 5 or 8 people that were in favor of it.
Yep.
And there's like 300 and something against it, you know. And Bert Cohen, in his very masculine fashion, came up to the podium as one of because the sponsors get to speak first,
Right.
and said, "I had no idea it was in the bill. I got to go do something. I'll see you later." Boom, out the door. It was pretty. Now, Martha Fuller Clark, to her credit, although I absolutely disagree with her,
Right.
sat there for 2 hours listening to people who are really BS.
Yeah.
Right? So I gave her credit because she actually, faced the music. But it occurred to me while I was listening to that this was obviously an anti-Second Amendment bill. It was obviously a chipping away at that right.
Right.
And that's what it was doing. But it also occurred to me that if some whacked out teenager grabbed Dad's AR-15 and opened up fire at the local high school 2 days before the vote, that room would have been full with 400 people asking us to pass it.
Right.
And politicians, being the invertebrates that they are, will fold because if the push is hard enough, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so I don't know what my point was. Do you remember what I was getting at?
No, I was just looking at your eyes. Make sure they're...
What?
What are you talking about?
You're saying about why you originally got involved. And...
Yeah, but anyway, So as much as as much as I agree with John, they're your rights. Period. The fact of the matter is, if you're gonna get arrested and jailed for exercising those rights, like Jerry DeLamus just got 89 months.
Yeah.
For just having a gun out west.
Yeah.
Pretty much that's it. That's what he did. So yes, they're your rights, and constitutionally, John's absolutely right. I mean, there's no.
It's like the Constitution's suspended.
It is.
It's like we're all in a contract. We're all corporations because we're persons. We're not people anymore. We're persons, and we were made persons through our birth certificate since 1933, if not before that.
But the practical matter is, I went out to visit Lee Quant on my motorcycle 2 or 3 years ago, and I was coming back, and I said, I don't want to take 101 back all the way from the seacoast, so I decided to try taking back roads, and I screwed up. And I looked up, and the sign said, next exit, 495. And I says, crap, I'm in Massachusetts. I'd gone over the border without knowing it.
Really?
I don't have a helmet on, and I got my pistol in my pocket.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Now, if I cross the border to Massachusetts, do I lose my right to free speech? Nope. Do I lose any other constitutionally provided for right? I don't think so. But my right to self-defense is out the window, and I could do a year in jail. So, yes, practically I should still have that right regardless of where I am. But, functionally, if I'm going to do a year in jail, I lose everything. I lose the house, everything. So
because you're a corporate person. That's why. That's why they can take your rights. They're not taking your rights. They are calling the terms of the contract that you didn't agree to at one time in your life, and they're telling you that they are in charge of that contract, of that corporation, that personhood. Look up the definition of person. You'll find that it's not one of us that are sitting here living, breathing. It is the other external part of us, the corporate personhood that they've created, so they can lean us and levy us and control us through statutory codes, rules, and statutes and legislation.
okay.
It's real simple. I mean, but it's a difficult concept because we're not thinking of us being two of us. There's this living, breathing flesh, and then there's this person that we are responsible
It's
for.
subject to contractual.
And for the folks out there, I know it's a little bit odd to maybe hear this, but look at the signature line on your personal check, and you'll see that it's not actually a line. It's actually a series of words that say authorized signer or authorized representative, and they're talking about you're the authorized representative of the all-cap corporate name in the upper left-hand corner. I mean, that's one of the first easiest things to figure out, that person that's signing that's the man signing that, but he's the authorized signer of the all cap name that's up in the upper left hand corner. It's real simple. Check it out and tell me if it's not there. Feel free to call in.
Well, I mean, I think too, the framers of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, I mean, they put in express language, and they put these protections in place in terms of majority votes and having to be ratified by the states, so that they couldn't easily be taken away. And the democratic process of taking away our right to bear arms is nearly impossible given the makeup of our 50 states and our constituencies. And so that kind of gave life, in my opinion at least, to this idea of the Constitution as a living, breathing document that could be interpreted to the times, which is obviously, Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her ilk bring that up all the time, is that there's no strict interpretation of the Constitution. It's meant to basically essentially fit the times that it's being viewed in. And, that's just an escape clause for folks that, essentially can't get it through the legislative process to chip away and to eat away at those rights. But I think if George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and the rest of them were here today, they understood how invaluable those rights are. And when you're trying to overthrow the King of England, obviously the first thing they want to take away from you is your ability to carry guns and overthrow his rule. So for them, it was probably the sacred cow. But we have moved, forward 200, 300 years, and all of a sudden, people don't have that same frame of reference. So for us that are
they're ignorant.
Yeah, unfortunately, for lack of a better term, I mean, it's true. I mean, it's there's no frame of reference. So for us that are passionate about maintaining those rights and preserving them, I mean, I talk to a lot of people that are outside politics, and they don't understand kind of my ferocious zeal when defending the Second Amendment rights, because I'm really defending something that we already have, and it's being taken away, in my opinion, through illegal and illicit means, which is subverting the Constitution.
Yeah, well, when I back in 2001, when I got up to fight that bill, the argument I used, because everybody else said the Second Amendment, state Second Amendment, the federal Second Amendment, I used the New Hampshire 10th Amendment. And the New Hampshire 10th Amendment is the right to revolt. And so if you have a right to revolt, that means you must, by definition, have a means by which to do it.
I would agree with that. I mean, but take a look at it in the context of...
The founding fathers agreed with that.
Take a look at it in the context of the courts. They're another instrument of government in a way, obviously, and so the right to revolt goes, in my opinion, kind of counter to exactly the function that they think they're there to provide, which is the continuity of government, regardless of what form that government takes. And so, it really is no stretch to see why they try to loosen the definitions and the meanings of these provisions in the New Hampshire, Constitution as well as the federal Constitution, because it serves their purpose in terms of their growth and taking of more power.
I heard another constitutional provision that has been, the United States Congress has subverted a few things in the Constitution. One was that Congress is the only one who can declare war. In the last, I think since World War II, we have never declared war. We have only the Congress scapegoats by saying, well, we'll fund it.
Right.
So they never go on record as actually voting for war. And the other thing I just found out today, and I didn't really understand it, was Obama was going around and entering into these contracts with the Iran peace deal,
right,
and the climate, the French climate deal,
Paris climate
climate agreement. I didn't realize until today, listening to Rush Limbaugh, because I figured, well, that's Obama agreed to it. So what? It's not a what does the Senate ratify? Treaty. It's not a treaty.
Right.
Well, according to Rush, from his people or whoever does his investigating, that agreement that Obama made is as good as a a treaty that the Senate has ratified, and that it's only by Trump's direct action to pull out of it that we will pull out of it. If he just lets it ride, we're still bound by that agreement.
Yeah.
Which is another thing that the U.S. House and Senate the Senate in this case has done, is basically make it so that they're not culpable if the president makes a bad deal. It says, well, we didn't sign anything, we didn't vote for that,
Right.
so they can stay out of it. Let the president take the heat if it goes bad, and they don't have to do anything. It's cowardice.
Well, I mean, but they've been perpetually doing that, obviously for a long time now, ceding their powers that, they don't want to take title to, essentially, especially with the war powers. I mean,
Right.
if you look at what Clinton, Bush, and then Obama, and what Trump's up to right now, in some cases, it's a bunch of cowards, basically, not wanting to go ahead and be responsible for sending someone's son or daughter off to war.
Right, like
so.
Afghanistan's a very clear case where you had all the arguments to go to war with with Al Qaeda in
Right.
Afghanistan. That should have been pretty clear. Vote to go to war against the forces of evil, or whatever you want to call it, and there was nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, they had a vote for funding it, I think, and that was it, right?
This is just, but it's funny that we're talking about up in kind of modern history, and if you go back to March 4th, 1933, and you listen to Franklin Roosevelt's inaugural speech, he'll tell you the change that he was going to make, the fundamental change that he was going to make from what was happening before that to what is going to happen in the future, and we cannot go back to what we had. And he was real clear on saying this during his inaugural speech. And then March 6th, when they shut down all the banks, and it's called the Bankers' Holiday, March 6th, 1933. Again, check it out, folks. You'll see that the major change happened, and that's when gold was taken, and that's when gold was moved somewhere else, and the people that had gold in the banks lost it, and they had to now have some of the means to
Make a transaction.
And commerce. Drastic things happened 100 years ago, but we're talking about things now because nobody really is following what happened 100 years ago during
Right.
the history.
Right.
Trading with the Enemies Act, 1917. Read this stuff. I mean, it's so blatant and in your face, and when you read it,
Wait,
and you
trading with the enemy, is that like all these arms companies selling stuff to Germany and it's okay? Or Bush, I think
No.
the Bush seniors were making deals with
No, it's not.
Hitler.
It's much more serious than that, and it has to do with the American people.
Okay.
Again, it's a great read. I mean, this is real historical stuff that takes us up to why is stuff happening today, and going back to why statutes can restrict your constitutional rights and take them away. It's because of what happened in March 6, 1933. They don't teach us that. We don't learn it, but it's certainly in the books. It's certainly in the legislature. It's in archives in Washington D.C. It's so clear as to what happened back then that we need to get back to pre that if we really want to fix this issue.
Right.
When we talk about the Constitution of 1791, when it was ratified, and George Washington became the first president. Well, he wasn't the first president. There was 11 presidents beforehand.
Or the Continental Congress.
Yeah. John.
John Hancock.
John.
Was it?
No. John. I want to say Henson. John. I'll think of it. But there was I think 12 presidents before George Washington.
Yep.
But we considered George Washington the first president of this new Constitution, of this new contract, of this new banking contract, let's call it, or whatever you want to call it. But that he certainly was not the first president of the United States.
Okay.
There's a lot of history that gets convoluted and lost over all of the arguments that we make up today about things that we talk about in the legislature.
Right.
And either that's not true or this isn't true, and I tend to believe that history is true.
Well, I was reading an article, I think it was last week, by Charles Krauthammer. He's the guy on Fox
Sure.
News, the journalist. And
Sharp dude.
Oh yeah, and he was pointing out that most of the Republican policies, conservative Republican policies put forth over the last like 60, 70 years, are trying to undo the Democrat supermajorities that were held under FDR during the 30s and into the 40s. And he was using it as an argument not to get away, not to have Trump do away with the filibuster rules and the 60 vote majority in the Senate. Because talking about how much havoc that could create with a 51 vote majority going forward and sweeping change anytime one party just shifted hands. And so he used that as his argument, being like, basically saying like so much damage was done to the really to the future of the country because of those Democrat supermajorities and a lot of the social welfare programs that they put forward that were so costly, as well as the taking of people's gold and going to a different standard for our currencies and so on and so forth.
To paper, to fiat currency.
Right. Well, but his point being was that the country wouldn't be able to deal with such rapid and really dramatic changes in policy from administration to administration. I mean, it was
yes, but the problem with that argument, and I get it, is that the cat's already out of the bag. If the Democrats take over and they have a majority, they're going to go to 51 votes.
I would agree with that.
There is no way that they're not.
I would agree with that. No, I mean they evidenced that
Senate.
during passage of the ACA initially. After Scott Brown won Teddy Kennedy's seat, and then the Democrats immediately went to the nuclear option to get their way. Despite losing a very, very blue seat in a very, very blue state, which I thought was sending them a pretty clear message about what people are at.
It was a very clear message.
So
that's exactly. So
no, I mean, we're really kind of going into this new phase where the political warfare tactics being used is, it's really at win at all costs.
Politics is war.
And
politics is a bloodless war.
Yeah, but the thing is,
anyway.
Yeah.
So far,
I think Bart's right though. We've gotten to a point of almost absurdity. We got to go up tomorrow. Did you hear? I'm sure you heard about this. There is a group of women who are going to be up there protesting about the misogyny in the State House.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. I don't know what they're even talking about.
No, I mean, I read the op-ed from Representative Altshuler, and it's something I felt more Democrats should have stood up and said this is not how business is transacted up here. I mean, you got 400 representatives, and she spots the red pill guy Fisher, and then talks about a comment that she heard in passing in the hallway or something by another representative, and then all of a sudden that becomes evidence A, B, C, D, and everything else you need to say rape culture is prevalent amongst all the male representatives.
Right.
It's ludicrous, but again, we were talking about this earlier off air. For us that are up in the halls of Concord, we dismiss it as she's kind of a Looney Tune. But for people that are just tuning in or picking up the Concord Monitor, reading those, they don't know that stuff, and
right, they have no idea. I mean, I know a lot of women up at the State House, and I don't know of any assaults in recent memory. I think there was a few years ago, and that was dealt with to the best of my knowledge. I don't know of any women that are. I don't.
I was there for 6 years. I never saw any dislike of women or disrespect or any other kind of prejudice or anything of any women. I mean, we all got along great. Everybody's accepted as members of the House.
Well, I mean, just to show you like how things are deteriorating. I mean, one of the comments in her article, her op-ed, talked about how a state rep that had been up there for a long time and has a concealed carry. I guess it doesn't need a permit anymore. Anyway, just carries his firearm in the State House. Turned to either her or one of her fellow representatives and said, "Don't worry, little lady. If anything goes wrong, I'll protect you." And to her, that was the height of misogyny. That this nice gentleman, thought that she, because she was a woman, might need or want or desire protection. And he probably just meant it, tongue in cheek. It's just a joke.
Right.
But yet, she's incredibly offended. It makes me wonder
people are too offended easily today anyway. Well, everybody's offended over something. Remember?
Don't offend me.
Why? 50 years ago.
50 years ago.
50 years ago, nobody was offended. I mean, what happened? Where does everybody gets their feelings hurt for?
It's a culture of sensitivity now. I mean,
Well,
I
the
think
thing
it,
is
Right.
that
I mean,
that
what happened? I mean, what?
yes,
why
but
is
it's
everybody
only
so
but it's
sensitive?
only one way. Representative Frost, the one we're talking about, also earlier this year was calling senators.
efforts.
Yeah, you can't even say it on the air.
Right.
Okay, which is something you don't do in the House.
Well, and then she threatened to kill fellow representatives. Said she was getting homicidal.
We got homicidal.
Because some male representatives referred to her as a nice lady or something like that, or
No, they told her to calm down.
yeah, something to that effect. But
Which is something you actually do say to newer legislators who are trying to get something through. When it doesn't go through, you say, "Look, there's tomorrow. Don't
Right.
worry about it." You know what I mean?
right.
This is your first rodeo. You can't expect to, and saying that offended her.
The speaker or the minority leader or whoever party that rep happens to be in should be speaking to this person. But again, nobody's going to restrict their right to say whatever they want. But there are rules in the House, and there are certain rules. But I think the primary rule is anybody can say pretty much whatever they want.
Yes and no. Yes, and I disagree.
When do you think it's right to restrict somebody's language? You were just talking
Okay.
about Massachusetts.
Okay, right. Okay.
What little bit of could they restrict of your First Amendment right?
Okay,
as you
you're
said?
going to let me finish? You're restricting my rights right now.
No,
I'm getting
no,
I'm
you're
getting
speaking
offended.
over me. You have every. you're exerting your rights.
All right. Judiciary Committee. We're dealing with end-of-life issues, abortion, and a host of other really, really emotional issues.
Yeah.
If the decorum, if you lost decorum and people are, yelling across at the other legislators on, the Democrats, Republicans, Democrats are calling us misogynistic SOBs, or we're calling them baby killers in committee. You can't operate that way. You have to be respectful, state your opinion. I mean, when you get up to the well, what's the rules? You say you're addressed as, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Right.
And then you speak. You're not even allowed to address a fellow state legislator by their name. Like if it was Neil Kirk, you'd say, in response to the representative from where I'd like to say,
Right.
or something like that. The decorum is absolutely necessary to get anything done.
I mean, I guess I would agree that the decorum is necessary, but how you go and bring about that decorum, though, I don't think you have the right to tell a rep who calls someone else either a baby killer or whatever the term that someone wants to use to anger somebody else. I think first off, if someone talks like that, and I've had people in my committees that have no problem using personal insults and taking things way too far in terms of the comments they use, but usually because of the social contract we all have with one another, just being colleagues and working with one another, there's pressure put on that person by not just the people from her party, but from the opposite party
Right.
as well, or his party or opposite party, and that situation is handled as such, or the chairman will basically call an end to the discussion until people
Rule
calm
them
down.
out of order or whatever, yeah.
I tend to agree with John that once you start deciding what fits the bill and what doesn't, all of a sudden we have these situations that we have out at like UC Berkeley where Ann Coulter can't go speak because now all of a sudden she's the modern day Nazi.
Well, see, that to me is different in that they're speaking at a college. It's not a legislators who are supposed to, you represent 3,000 some odd people.
Yep.
You're not representing just yourself. So how you carry yourself is very, very relevant.
Then those people will vote you out next time.
Theoretically.
But they have the ability to do it. The place of removing a rep is for the people that vote that rep in. Censor that rep. Well, I guess they can be censured by the House,
right?
But they can't be removed by a vote, or they can't be removed. You can't remove an elected official for just saying something that you don't.
No, I think it has to be
offends you.
treason or something else. Yeah,
Right.
I agree with that.
Right.
But as speaker, the proper thing would be to, if somebody just could not control their emotions would be just to remove them from committee and put them on a list.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's certainly things you can do in that regard. But I mean, again, I agree. I mean, like, I don't like what Sherry Frost has to say. Find her to be on the wrong side of sane. But at the same time, the constituents of Dover are making the decision whether or not they want to send her back.
Right.
And if she represents the 3,000 people that vote for her, it is what it is. It's just something I have to deal with.
Right,
So.
right. Yeah, we always have.
I don't agree in restricting anybody's right to say anything or speak their mind, and let the voters will get rid of them if they want to. The people that voted Sherry in might say, "Good for you," and more of it, and we'll double down on you.
Double down, add more.
We'll give you more votes this time. We don't know.
Right.
Right.
So who is it to anybody in the legislature in Concord to try to remove her? Whether I like her or not, I don't know her, but I mean, I would fight vehemently to protect anybody's right to say whatever they want, as long as they don't commit a crime, they don't get violent, they're not. But if anybody wants to say anything they want, I mean, sorry that other people's ears can't handle it. Other adults' ears can't handle it.
That's actually one of the problems. I think one of the legislators said something while there's actually children in the room too. But anyway, so
Could be different.
yeah. So other than that, how do you like it up there?
No, I mean, I've made a lot of good friends and acquaintances up there on both sides of the aisle. It's certainly a great experience. It's just, I think it's a little frustrating. Not necessarily last term. I mean, there were some votes that obviously I wanted to go differently, but I accepted a certain amount of compromise with the Democrats and working together because we had a Democrat governor last term. And I think
Right.
this term, having Governor Sununu and then controlling everything from the House to the Senate to the Executive Council, I was hoping that we'd have a much more bold agenda. I think that's what people voted for. I think that's why we've got all the majorities in the governor's office for the first time in 12 years. And I like Chris. I have my rough patches with the speaker, but we're getting along right now. But I just see this so far as somewhat of a term wasted, and I'm not sure that the voters are going to give us another opportunity, at least for a while. I mean, there's only two parties, so we'll have another chance down the road. But I see very, very small visions, small goals, and even smaller achievements so far for this term.
Well, if there's any consolation to that, I was there during 2008 to 14, and during 2012, 10 to 12, we had a supermajority of 300 to 100.
Yep.
Something like that. And
Yeah, but we didn't have the governor.
we didn't have the governor, but we had a veto-proof House,
Right, so
veto-proof
governor's
Senate, and
made a
you
little
would-
weaker at that point in
and,
time.
And frankly, there was an awful lot of frustrations there too that we still couldn't get things through.
Yeah.
That absolutely should have gone, and it's just the way it is.
Yeah, I mean,
We could have overridden any governor with 300 or 18 senators and 300 reps.
And I get, the
frustrating.
calculus that's being played, by the governor. If he doesn't come off as too right wing, too conservative, doesn't do things that, in a sense, alienates the Democrat base, then maybe it won't be this groundswell to knock him out, in the upcoming
I
election.
think that's a lot of what's going on.
And again, that Chris is governor, I'm not, and if that's the calculus that he's putting into play, but I just always remind people of the calculus that Senator Ayotte had played. And I really don't think you could have been as bipartisan, almost too much so, in terms of her time down in Washington, D.C., and yet she still lost an election, which she didn't back the presidential candidate. She supported all these initiatives that go against the Republican platform, and in the end, she was not rewarded for that. So to me, that sends a message of if people want change and they're voting for that, when they give you the keys to the Cadillac, you better deliver, and
Right.
I don't think we've done that. So,
Yeah. So votes tomorrow. What's the ones that you care about?
so tomorrow,
Oh no, you're state rep. You have to care about all of them.
all of them are deeply important. But no, tomorrow, SB 66 is important. I think that's one that's kind of gotten way out of control in terms of
What-
that's the fetal homicide bill.
Yep.
I think just in terms of the partisan bickering and messaging on that piece of legislation, I would encourage anybody that's watching that has concerns about it to actually read the bill. It really preserves a mother's choice or a doctor's decision to perform an abortion, so on and so forth. This is really about a mother's choice to bring her baby to term, and if someone through a criminal act takes that away, that should be an additional charge, an additional punishment. That's a
Right.
life that's been extinguished, a life that the mother has already made an affirmative choice to move forward with.
Right.
So I'm not sure how this really isn't along the same lines as supporting women's rights in any other context.
It has nothing to do with that. It is the same mentality that believes that all men up there are misogynist
Right.
is the same mentality that look at anything that identifies the unborn as anything other than a fetus worthy of disposal.
Right.
Anything that goes beyond that is a direct assault on women's rights. I don't agree with that. I think that's BS. Like you said, if a woman decides to have a child, and I think it was Representative Rideout's grandson, 7 months along, if I remember.
Yep.
That woman, his daughter, made the decision to have that child.
Right.
And that decision was taken from her against her will.
Right, and that's where I think this meshes up with pro-choice, because the mother has made a choice to have that baby,
Yes.
and then we should protect that choice, whether it's to have an abortion or to carry the baby to term. And we've got states like California and New York that have this law. They're extremely deep blue states that are very, very supportive of a woman's right to choose. So that
And it's a crime to take the life of a fetus before term. Is that
with the exceptions of if the mother chooses to terminate
Right.
through an abortion,
Right.
all those rights are protected.
Right.
It's simply if a mother is assaulted or a mother's in a car accident with a
Right.
drunk driver and she loses the unborn child,
right?
at that point in time, that individual could be charged with additional homicide.
Right, and right now it's just there's no, it's not a double murder, or it's not a murder or a homicide.
because they don't consider under the current laws the unborn baby to be a living human being.
In statute.
Right.
And that's what we go back to the beginning of what I was talking about, in statute.
Right.
And I'll tell you, I spoke on this on the floor of the House. I still think that my speech was real close to being the point, but it didn't get across. And the only difference is between a fetus the day before it's born and a fetus that it's a baby once it's delivered, is a number is attached to that fetus. And a security number, a securitized number, is attached to that fetus that we call a Social Security number. And that is the account number that they carry with them for the rest of their life. And if that number was attached to the fetus, and that fetus was, and I hate to say it like this, but this is what it really is. Because why would a day make a difference of whether or not this is a homicide or just a higher type of misdemeanor?
Well, there's
Because you need to create a number that the government can attach some sort of security to that fetus, and it can securitize, and in other words make it almost, I hate to say their property, but that's what that security number does. But once the government has a reason to use that number, not the fetus, but the number
Right.
that's attached to it, to create Federal Reserve notes with, then the government will come down on you with all of its power, whether you damage one of their park benches, or whether you damage one of their police cars, or whether you damage anything out here that has a number attached to it.
well, but I really do. I mean, the
A fetus
Democrats
is absolutely a living, breathing human being at this point.
But that's
Before
where this discussion
before it's delivered.
kind of I think falls into the melee here is that Democrats that are very, very concerned about pro-choice rights look at this and say much the way we sometimes do on gun bills, that this is a backdoor
Slippery slope.
slippery slope a protection grab for unborn children. We're trying to use a backdoor, pull on people's heartstrings to take away people's right to choose. And they're from my discussions with them, they feel if we assign the word homicide or murder, we're declaring that unborn child an actual human being, and therefore there's
Well,
precedent.
it is.
But it
is a human
and I
being.
completely agree with you. But that's how they're looking at it. They're taking like the whole aspect of justice for the mother that's made the choice to bring that baby to term. They're taking that completely out of their calculus as to how they're going to vote on this bill.
Correct. But through statute, they can exempt abortions.
Oh, and they have.
And through statute, through the contract, through the terms of the contract that none of us ever agreed to that we're in, but we're in it, we could easily exempt doctors from performing abortions. As a matter of fact, you don't need to be a doctor to perform an abortion. Abortion clinics, they perform abortions. You don't even need a license for it, by the way.
Yeah.
You don't need to be a licensed. It's a medical procedure, I think so, but you don't need to be a doctor or a medical professional
Right.
to perform an abortion,
Right.
which is another crazy kind of fact. So we keep talking about doctors. They aren't doctors. I mean, they do them in the hospitals, in the local hospitals. They put on a different hat from a Catholic to a Dartmouth hat, for instance, or they change hats in these hospitals, and different wards are allowed to do things that one may find outrageous, and the other
So that
wing is fine.
so that was SB 66.
Yep.
So if you're out there and you want to make sure that people vote for SB 66, call your state legislator tonight, actually,
Yeah.
or email them tonight. Then what's the other one? There's
SB3, which is a big election law bill coming up
Right.
tomorrow, and so which has a significant amount of Republican support for it. Democrats, I think, are almost aligned to the person against it. I have this again goes back to my issues with this term in terms of being small steps, sometimes meaningless steps. I've read the bill multiple times, read the amendment coming out of the House Election Law Committee, and the big issue I think we were tasked with, by constituents that really cared about election law reform this term, was to make sure that people had to provide some level of actual proof prior to voting that they're a New Hampshire resident.
right.
And if you read this bill, it has all this bark to it, but when you get down to the end, it's got one big exception, whereas if you don't have any of these things, you don't meet any of these requirements, but you say you're a New Hampshire resident, all you have to do is just sign this form, and here's your ballot. And once you go into that voting booth, the damage is done. I mean, we're a swing state, so 1,000 votes can decide the presidency, can
Right.
decide a Senate race, it can decide the governor. I mean, Hillary Clinton beat Donald Trump by, I think, 1,067 votes. Maggie Hassan beat Kelly Ayotte by like 920 or something like that. So making sure that we have secure elections really matters in New
But the
Hampshire.
Secretary of State will tell you there's no voter fraud.
Well, that's what I was talking to. I was at caucus today. And I was talking to people about that, and I just felt like it did not go far enough. Maybe it's a step in the right direction, but it's not great. But the real problem isn't actually legislation; it's prosecution. In other words, if they're not going to, this bill, if it passes, that person goes in there and says, I live here, I want to vote. They say, okay, fill in this affidavit and give us the evidence that you're a resident within the next X number of days.
10 days.
10 days.
Or else what? You can't pull the vote out.
No, you can't pull. That's just it. That's like what he just said.
Yeah.
But the real trick will be if people falsify that information to vote. If the Secretary of State, because next year is not a presidential year, so
Midterm, yep.
it'll be really good. So if the new AG, which theoretically is really good, actually starts prosecuting people for falsifying that information or not providing that information, I think it'll go a long way. It's like anything else. Most of the police officers in the state of New Hampshire are really good. You have a few police officers who are really bad. And the fact that the AG office never prosecutes them means that they can keep being really bad and putting citizens at risk and putting, destroying the integrity of the police force itself.
Right.
It's all about enforcement. I mean, if you look at the pedophile scandal in the Catholic Church, the fact that there was a pedophile priest here and there isn't really so abnormal that people should be shocked. What really was the problem was that they weren't prosecuted. The church itself did not go after those people, get them away from people, and prosecute them for what they were doing to little kids. And that's why it was able to escalate out of control, because if there is no prosecution, if there is no accountability, it only breeds more corruption, or in that case, perversion. And so if
You mentioned
we,
AG. I can't tell you how fortunate the people of the state of New Hampshire are to have Gordon MacDonald as their new.
I'm hoping
Attorney
he's
General.
really good.
I think I've known him for I don't know, 10 years or so.
Okay.
I think, but not well. But I've known him for about 10 years.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, I think New Hampshire is going to be one of the luckiest states to have him as our new Attorney General.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so
I
as
have
well.
had nothing but bad opinions of our attorney generals, including Kelly Ayotte, ever since I've been up there.
Well, I mean, we've had some Republican attorney generals over the years.
I don't care who they are;
know,
they're
and-
horrible.
No, but my point being is that, when we talk about the enforcement provisions, and so it's like you have 10 days to respond in terms of setting in the actual documented proof that meets the outline. I think it's 10 different types of identification
Yeah,
could
some
satisfy.
rent receipt or something.
If you don't do that within the 10 days, then you're automatically, I guess, scrubbed from the voter rolls.
No, the I believe it's the supervisor of the checklist has to go or find out where you are.
Well, the end result of that is if they can't locate you, you're taken off the voter rolls, which obviously to the
Doesn't this sound like just a big distraction?
Right.
To the real problems that we're dealing
but
with
to the
in
fraudulent
state.
voter, what do they just show up?
They don't care.
4 years from now,
And they'll vote several times that day.
And you made a good point as well, Gary, that if someone puts misinformation on their form, they don't put their buddy's address. They just make up an address
Right.
and no one checks it. There's just absolutely no way.
Well, just stop it. Just if you can't prove who you are and you live here and you're a resident, go vote in your own state.
Well,
I mean,
I
if you're a
just-
college
but-
student, you can do an absentee ballot in your home state.
Take a look at the number of same-day registrants, especially in the big cities of people that don't have identification. All right, where do all these people exist? Like, I've never experienced these people in real life before.
Actually, I disagree with you, and I'll tell you why. Is 2000? I think it was 2012.
Yep.
One of my friends from Deering was at the polling place, right? And Obama and the Democrats sent out all these emails and text messages or whatever to a young woman. They say, well, if you don't go out and vote for Obama, the Republicans are going to get your right to have an abortion. And to the older people, they said, if you don't vote for Obama, the Republicans are going to take all your Social Security away.
Right.
And they just did all these really, really intense scare tactics to voters. And it was really, really effective.
Right.
And she said that she saw a lot of people, same-day registrants, at that election, and she knew them from town. They were just that good at motivating people to go and vote, even though they had never registered.
Oh no! I'm not
So I'm-
saying that the same-day registrants themselves. I've same-day registered before. The issue I have is where are all these same-day registrants that have no identification about proving that they live in New Hampshire. Where are all these people? Like, people just don't walk around without identification.
Yes, that's true. That's
staying
true.
at senators' houses. For
Right.
Yes.
I mean, look at Martha Fuller Clark. I mean, all the people that she had back in 2008 staying at her place that
Right.
registered to her address.
Right.
These things do exist. They do happen. It was something that we set out as a caucus to solve this term.
And in 10 years, we haven't come close.
Right. But this term, when we have the actual assets to do it,
Right.
we basically write a law that, in my opinion, starts us back at the beginning again. Because right now, if you say, "Oh, I don't have identification," what do they give you? A little postcard, an affidavit to sign, and they're supposed to contact you and follow up, and they don't. And we've got enforcement provisions there too, but
No, I agree. I don't think it's even comes close to what I wanted.
And I've got constituents in Bedford, obviously, that are highly conservative, highly motivated to make sure that this situation gets resolved. And I've got a lot of emails and phone calls saying, "Please vote for SB3." And I've had to, have some pretty long phone calls with people explaining my opposition to this bill, and really setting straight a lot of the misinformation that they've been given about the grand solutions this has as part of it.
Right.
And so, I'm not going to be supporting the legislation only because I think it's a setback rather than a step forward. And I say
Right.
setback because the billing this is getting, not just in New Hampshire, but nationally. I mean, they're talking about it on CNN and all sorts of other stuff like that. Makes it seem like there's this heated battle afoot, with these grave consequences on either end. And both sides are blowing this completely out of proportion because nothing's going to change.
No, I
Right.
agree. I
It's just a
agree.
distraction.
This
keep you
bill,
guys
and I
busy.
tell my Democrat friends this bill doesn't disenfranchise anybody. Anybody that could vote before can vote now. We don't even disenfranchise the out-of-state voters with this bill.
Right.
I mean, the only way that you can be denied under this legislation from voting right now is if you admit at the time of registering that you're not from New Hampshire. I mean, think about how messed up that is.
Right.
You have to self-identify as a fraudster at the time of registration. Otherwise, they can't deny you.
Right.
And you don't even need ID.
That's my point.
Right. What if you live in a parking lot? What if you don't have an address and you can just you can say you live anywhere?
Absolutely.
A lot of people
And-
live in church parking lot. Their addresses.
That actually fits, though, really, with the whole culture now. People I self-identify as a New Hampshire
You
resident.
self-identify as anything, and that becomes what you are.
And we don't want to diminish their creative spirit,
Right,
so.
right.
Right. You can identify as anything.
Right.
Well, Hillary identifies as having won the election, apparently,
Right,
according
still.
to the headline I saw last
Still-
week.
Oh, did you see what she did today?
What?
Oh, she went and she was paid, which is unbelievable. I'm pretty sure they paid her a long time before the election or something, but they paid her to speak at a electronics convention or thing, which she obviously knows a lot about electronics because she had that nice server in her frickin' bathroom or whatever it is. You know what I mean? So
Right.
she is good. But that's what she was today. She was saying that it was all her because she lost because basically because men don't want to vote for women. That was it. It's misogyny again.
Yeah,
So-
no,
'Cause us men
I'm
hate
shocked.
women.
I'm shocked to see her play the victim card.
Again and again, she keeps coming out every
It's the most
every
overused
week.
victim
It's some
card.
different excuse.
And then there was one the other day that she said the reason that she lost is because Democrats, the media, made her victory seem like it was absolutely
far-
destined to happen. That her lead on Trump was insurmountable, and that nothing was going to change it.
So she let her guard down because she was told that
Right.
so it wasn't really her fault.
And then there was the article last week that that the reason Comey acted was because he acted on fake Russian news, which closes that whole. Now it's not
Right.
Comey's fault. He was relying on the same fake news that apparently had duped
Right.
everybody else.
Yeah. No, it's all.
Governor
it's all-
Sununu was awesome on Allison Camerata's CNN show this morning.
Oh yeah, the
Sunus-
senior. Oh yeah.
senior.
Oh god.
He was awesome.
Yeah, he was good.
And
he
I
was
don't.
good.
Yeah,
Caught her
I've always
completely
liked
flat-
him, but
yeah.
I tell you, I don't compliment him all the time. But this morning, I was just listening to him. I thought he was great.
Oh yeah, he asked her
He-
point blank, "Have you seen any evidence?"
Yeah,
She said no, and it was just
it's
a
over.
showstopper.
What else? Okay,
Right.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
There's no evidence
It's a
of
new
collusion.
investigation. He goes, well, it's been 7 months. What do you mean new?
Right.
He was awesome. Governor Sununu, you did a great job.
He did do a good job.
Yeah.
We got like 3 minutes left. What other legislation is coming up tomorrow? That's
Those were the two big ones. I think there's also a education choice bill that's coming out tomorrow.
Right.
I forget I think it's SB 128 or something.
yeah,
like
that stemmed
so.
out of the school up near Claremont, not
Croydon?
Croydon, where
Yeah.
they were told they couldn't send their children to a private school, even though
Right.
it was cheaper than sending them to a high school. They don't have a high school in the town, so they were going to send them to a private school because
Right.
it's just better economics, and they weren't allowed to. So,
Yeah, I
think I'm in favor of this.
Yeah,
one.
I am too. I mean, I think listen, we're assigning a cash value basically to every single student that we have in the public school system.
Right.
So if they don't have a public school system in their town, using that same state value to send them to a private school, it doesn't seem to add any cost to me. So I just don't understand what the issue there. On Democrats' side, they called it a diminution of our public school
Sure.
Of course they did.
system and so on and so forth.
How come taxpayer money can't follow the child to the choice of the parent's education?
Can't do that.
It can't because it.
No, Article 6 of the state constitution says nobody shall be compelled to pay for, basically, I can't do it verbatim, nobody shall be compelled to pay for the secular education of anybody else's child. So if you just gave them a bunch of money and they went to a Catholic school, that would be violating Article 6 of the state constitution.
But if you give the parent the money and the parent
Still,
After it was.
it's still my tax money going to somebody that my dollars are going to somebody to go to a Catholic school. So it's I disagree with that. I would rather it didn't say that.
Right.
Because I would
I see what you're
rather.
saying.
But but that's what, you know.
See, I read that just in terms of the state can't transfer the money directly to the private.
There's only one sentence in Article 6 of the New Hampshire Constitution that talks about education. Only one.
Actually, the whole thing was about education.
It
Originally.
was before 1968, and then it was changed at a convention. I think I don't even know how it was changed. Somehow in 1968, the original Article 6 was all about education. It was huge. It was great. It was
really powerful.
each town
actually.
would be responsible for their own teachers and their own education. After 1968,
They gutted it.
They gutted it, and they put one sentence in there into the new Constitution. And
Hey,
boy, is it
John,
different.
we gotta go, bud.
We got 30 seconds. Why? Oh, they took the picture down. Oh, there it is.
Bart, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for
I
having
hope
me.
you'll come on
Yeah,
again.
good seeing you,
We're
Bart.
crazy.
Absolutely, no, it was a
Well,
fun
he's
time.
crazy. I'm actually perfectly normal.
Your eyes aren't brown.
Yeah, they are actually.
They are.
Yeah.
Well, stay safe in the storm tonight. So
Yeah, tornado, twister. What is it? Hurricane.
something. So.
Yeah, probably blizzard too.
Hurricane Hillary.
Hurricane Hillary. Hey, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you.